Hey fam, so we are currently parked up in Western Kentucky where we are expected to have a massive snowstorm this weekend. And those projections where we currently are between 11 and 19 inches of snow plus a few inches of ice. And that is a catastrophic amount of snow and ice for an area like this, because we just are not prepared from an infrastructure perspective to deal with something like that in terms of icing the roads, plowing the roads, so on and so forth. So the likelihood that our community will lose power this weekend is so high. And that could last anywhere from a few hours, a few days, a week or more. So I think that we have seen things happen like this a few years back in Texas, and even farther back in Kentucky here. We had a really bad ice storm in 2009, 2010. Anyways, when that happened before, we were without power for almost 2 weeks. And so that was in a house and it was difficult. We live in a bus, and so we want to take some extra precaution so that way this isn't absolutely miserable. Now, we are off-grid most of the time, but in the winter, when we're not getting much sun and solar, that is more difficult. So let me show you a few ways we're preparing the bus, which would be super helpful for other people who live in vehicles. But if you live in a house, this also applies to you too, because there are just some things that we can get ready and you can get ready too. Let's go. With storms like this, there are a lot of things to think about. So you really need to streamline down to what are your top priorities. And for most people, your top priorities are power, heat, food, and water, of course. So let's deal with that. Let's talk first about power. You should assume the power is going to go out. It probably wouldn't if it was just snow, but since we're expecting so much ice, you really have to be prepared for your power to go out.
If you have a generator, then great. You're one step closer to having power. And if you frequently use your generator and you've run it recently, great, you know it's operational. Even in that case, I would still go ahead and double check your oil level, make sure that you have oil on hand in case you need to top it up, swap it out. Check the air filter and make sure it's clean, dry, not full of gunk. And if it is, then clean that up. If you don't have a generator, I would see if you can get one, although it may be tough because everyone else probably has the same idea, or see if a neighbor has one or a friend has an extra one that you can borrow. And if you're in the other situation, where you have a generator, but it's been sitting in the garage for a long time, you don't really remember the last time you run it, you don't use it very much, then here's what I would do in that instance. I would start by draining all the gasoline out of it, draining all the oil out of it, and you can do that with the gasoline by using a fuel transfer pump, just to pump all of it out. You can drain the oil out by just finding the oil plug, unscrewing that, letting it all drain out. Top it back up with fresh gasoline. I would say if you are planning to use all the gasoline in the generator right away, then you don't need to worry about getting ethanol-free gas. However, if it comes to the point where you're going to have gas sitting in your generator for a long time, then I would get ethanol-free gas. It just depends on your particular situation. Top it back up with oil. Make sure the air filter is clean. If it has a battery on it, then I would pull that out and double check the voltage. Get a little battery charger to top that up. Usually like a car battery charger will work for those because they're lead acid batteries. So once you have your battery topped up, new oil, new gas, check the spark plug if it has one. It does have one, so check it. Make sure that it is operational, replace it if need be, and if you've had an old generator, you probably will have to replace it. That's where I would start. Once you've done all those things, checked all those things, replaced all those things, see if it'll fire up. If it does, great. If it doesn't, then, well, there's some other things that we have to investigate, and that requires a manual and YouTube videos. So that's where I would start.
These are some generator options. These are more generator options. We have been using our Harbor Freight Predator generator for several years now with the bus, and it works great. I don't know why you would spend extra money to get a different brand. If you don't have a generator and one is not in your budget, even a small one, another option is to look at a smaller solar generator and then make sure it is charged. Next up is power and battery banks. Make sure you have one. Those little small power banks that charge your phone one time really aren't going to cut it in a situation like this. Not that you shouldn't charge them. If that's all you have, work with what you have. But if you can get somewhat of a bigger power bank, go ahead and do that. If you can buy a small little panel to throw on it that you could set out if you needed to, go ahead and do that. These are great to have for so many occasions, but definitely in a situation where you're sort of an emergency situation. They're more portable and they're going to keep your household in business in case your generator goes down. If you have a generator or a solar generator, you are going to need fuel sources for those. So I would suggest having several cans. They do also make generators that are propane and gas, which are great because then you could have two fuel sources. So just making sure that you have several cans of whatever fuel source you need. That could be propane, gas, diesel, whatever your situation is, make sure you have extras. In terms of your solar bank, you can charge it via the house while you still can. And then you can also get a small solar panel that you could put out to sort of keep it topped up if the power situation goes on for longer than expected. The next thing you will want to think about is lighting. You have a few really good options here. Lanterns are great. Make sure you have backup batteries. Flashlights are good for going and looking for things, but you are not going to want to hold a flashlight for multiple days if your lights go out. So make sure you have something that sits on a table and can project light around a room. It'll make your life easier. I've included links to a lot of the things that we're talking about in the description below. The next thing you need to think about is heat sources. We personally will be relying mostly on our diesel heater. It is just the most efficient sort of heat source we have. We do also have a backup propane heater head that attaches to a propane tank. And then last case scenario, incredibly inefficient, is the heating pump on our mini split. When power is at a minimum and there's not much sun, we probably will not be using the mini split. So for us, we just make sure our diesel heater is ready to rumble, and we make sure that we have enough diesel in reserve to heat it for several days up to a week. Make sure you have extra jerry cans full of whatever fuel source works for your appliances. For you in a house, a propane heater is an option. If you're using something like a Mr. Buddy, I would not use those small tanks. They do not last. So I would get an adapter that attaches to the larger 20-pound tanks. This does, however, create a condensation issue, or it can, because propane is a pretty wet fuel source. You can use it in a house. Make sure you do have proper ventilation. You can use it in a house, but it's just not your best option. For an in-house setting, I would really recommend something like a kerosene heater, and then obviously making sure you have extra kerosene for at least a few days up to a week. Then you have to think about other things that keep you warm, such as blankets, gloves, hats, hoodies, thermal layers, all things of that nature. I would recommend, if you can, getting a small 12-volt heated blanket. It won't last you forever, especially if you're running with limited power, but it's nice to have if you have the power to keep it going. For example, a 12-volt blanket will require a lot less power than something like a electric heater. That is just going to draw so much power, whereas a 12-volt blanket draws a lot less. But make sure you have all of these things ready and available in one space, and not spread out all over your house. You know, if you don't have lights, you do not want to be hunting down the scarves and gloves that you know you have somewhere in this house, but you just don't know where. If you are in an RV and you have the ability to skirt your vehicle, this can be done in several ways. You can use hay bales, you can use tarps, you can use cardboard if it really comes down to it. But essentially what you're trying to do is minimize the cold air that can go underneath the RV. Because if you have cold air blowing under the RV, it is going to make it colder inside.
What I have in front of me is a propane tank connected to a heater, and I've built this little hot box with a pallet, a couple tarps, and what I'm trying to do is heat up that water tank and keep this little room warm enough so that I can apply an adhesive sticky pad that is hooked up to a heating pad that I'm going to slap on the side of this gray water tank. The gray water tank is connected to our sink. I've already been running into issues with the spigot here freezing up, and I don't want the water that goes into this tank to freeze up during this snow apocalypse. And so I've bought a heating pad that I'm going to stick onto the side of this tank, and I need it to be warm enough so that the adhesive adheres and the heating pad stays on. Once that's on, I'm going to hook up the electrical system. There's a positive and negative wire connected to the heating pad, plug it into our battery bank, and that should keep the water tank warm enough in combination with some antifreeze so that we are all good to go and we don't need to worry about our gray water tank freezing, and then that would lead to us being unable to do dishes or use our sink while we are snowed in.
Another thing, if you're in an RV, and this is probably not something that you could prepare if you are expecting the storm this weekend, but just in general, is insulated curtains for your windows and doors. We have done a video on this, and dozens of people have used our curtain tutorial and sent us messages about what they made with it. But truly, having insulated curtains will significantly change the temperature in your rig. So in terms of food, if you have a gas oven, great, good, that's awesome. You're going to be able to cook. If you do not, and if you just have an electric stove or oven combo, then you're going to have to think about how you're going to cook food. One option is a grill, if you have a gas grill or propane, or if you have a fire pit, something like that. In terms of your refrigerator not working, that's fine. It's going to be freezing outside. You can put a cooler outside to be able to put liquids or meats or anything like that. Refrigeration is not going to be your problem. The problem is going to be cooking food if you rely on electricity to do so. Another thing to think about is non-perishables. Quick snacks, things that are easy, things you don't have to cook. I guess if you really wanted to, you could also get some like MRE camping hiking meals just to have around if you need a quick meal and you just want to be able to throw some warm water in it. Also, having some good communication. So if you have like an emergency weather radio, or if there's an app on the phone that does the same function, you just want to make sure that you can know what's going on outside of your house. A way to be able to listen to news, to listen to the radio, to listen to the weather, so you can sort of stay on top of what's happening right now and what's coming down the pipe. Make sure that you have all of your needed items ready and available. Specifically, shovels should not be out in a garage or in a separate shed. They should be where you're going to need them to do the work that you're doing. Your ice scraper for your car should not be left in your car where it's going to be iced over. You need to go ahead and have that out and ready.
All right, y'all, the snow has arrived. It has been going steady. I am so glad that we prepared for all of this. I hope you all have too. Stay safe, stay warm out there. And if you like this video, give us a like, subscribe. We're going to be putting out more videos week over week, and we are excited to see you next week. And last but not least, if you have any tips or tricks that we didn't mention in this video, leave them in the comments below, because we would love to learn from you all and provide more information for the community. Thank you all. See you next week.